Today we're going over the difference between law enforcement, whether that's county, whether that's local city, whether that's state or federal. Let's discuss. Hey, before I get started, I have two gifts in the description for you. One is the Getting Started workshop. It's going to walk you through every phase of the hiring process. Plus, there's some hidden bonuses in there that I know you will like. Next is our coaching call with any member of my staff or even myself if you would like, where you can jump on there, ask us a question, and we will go over anything specific to your hiring process or your success in your career. Now, law enforcement. How many different law enforcement is there? What's the pros and cons? Which one should you choose? City versus county versus state versus federal. We break this down into two main categories, and then one of those categories has subcategories. So we have local and we have federal, right? So local has the subcategories. Local has, your local towns or city law enforcement, plus you have your county, which some states actually have county police, but most of the time county is county sheriffs. And then you have your state police officers, right? So that's the subcategories within inside local. And then federal, you have your uniform patrol, law enforcement, or you have your agents or even your special agents. Yes, there is a difference. Some agencies dedicate individuals as agents, some dedicate individuals as special agents. Some agents are uniform, some are not uniform. It can get pretty convoluted, but let's break it down. So, what's better? Which one should you choose? This is solely going to depend on you. If I'm looking at an area where I said, hey, this is the area I live in, I want to protect my local community, then I'm probably looking at a town or city, municipality, possibly even a county. Right? And that is because when I'm going through, if I start getting into state or federal, a lot of times you might be subject to relocation. So huge consideration. Now, you get a wish list most of the time when you're applying to those, but usually when you apply to a state agency or a federal agency, you sign an agreement of relocation where you're able to be relocated every, one, once you get started, or two, every couple years if possible. So that's one consideration. The other consideration is when I am applying local, if I'm applying local to just some town PDs, understand that they usually, depending on the size of them, they're a tight-knit family, right? They're going to want to assess to make sure that you fit the needs of not only their department and what they're looking to hire, but also their community. And what I mean by this is you're not going to come in there and disrupt, you're not going to bring drama to the department. You're not going to come in there and create controversy. You're not going to get the department sued or in the newspaper for negative characteristics. Now, every department is making sure you don't do that, but they're going to be really, really nitpicking on that, right? Whereas in a larger agency, as long as you fit the mold and the qualifications, you're able to typically make it through the hiring process. So I will say this is with the larger local agencies, you're not going to get a chance to express yourself more, right? To kind of say, hey, I'm a good person, this is me. They're going to look at your documents and what you provide and what you articulate and the one or two off chances you get to actually talk to them. Whereas a smaller local department will probably be, if you can at least be reasonable and articulate yourself well, that's why you hear me say that so much, is because if you can do that, they're willing to at least hear you out and say, hey, whether they hire you after that or not, just depends. But if you say, hey, yeah, maybe I did have a DUI 15 years ago when I was 18 years old. But since then, I've been an outstanding member of society, right? That's actually one of the reasons I want to become law enforcement. I've had great, I have a family, I have a great work history, great credit history, no criminal issues besides that DUI, 15 years ago. Maybe then at that point in time, they'd be willing to hear you out. And I'm just throwing out arbitrary numbers. It doesn't have to be 15 years, but you get what I'm saying. So you look at that and you're at the situation where you need to you need to express yourself. A smaller department might be willing to hear you out more than a larger department will. So that's another consideration. Now let's switch over to county. Now, I did say some departments have county police departments. Consider applying to them the same as applying to a local PD, right? You're not going to have really anything different. But then you have your sheriff's departments, which are typically what's mostly in most states in charge of the county. So when it comes to jurisdictional boundaries, and we're not going to get into, hey, my state, if you're a law enforcement officer, you have jurisdiction all over the state. Yes, and that's usually for some type of emergency situation. But when I'm talking about actual patrol jurisdiction, where you can't sit here and say, hey, I'm ABC Police Department local patrol, but my state allows me to patrol, or I have, peace officer authority across the entire state. Yes, but you're not going to grab your squad car and drive to, you're in the southernmost part of the state, you're going to drive to the northern part of the state and patrol some other city. No, you're going to get fired for that, and you're probably going to get arrested. So if you're looking at county-wise, local has the least amount of jurisdiction. So local, town, city. County will have more jurisdiction, right? Because they're going to have all the towns, all the cities within their county. And then after that, state will have the largest jurisdiction within that state, excluding federal, right? So state will have the largest jurisdictional boundaries out of all of the quote-unquote local departments. So once again, subcategories of local is you actually have your local town and city PDs, then you have your county PDs, then you have your state PD, right? Or your state highway patrol, or whatever they call it. So when applying to state, you're going to have most of those jurisdictions. Now, if you're looking at, hey, what's the best opportunity for me? Understand that a sheriff is usually an elected official. Now, they have full discretion for hiring, usually when it comes to a county, where a sheriff can hire or terminate a deputy at will. It's usually, that's the way it works, based on their elected capacity. So with that being said, sheriffs, and what I'm really hitting on here is county, right? Sheriffs have one caveat that most people don't understand, and it's not every sheriff, but majority of sheriff, you usually have to start in some other aspect rather than just patrol. I like sheriff's offices because they are one of the most universal law enforcement organizations out there. If you wanted to, you could bounce around and get a good understanding and be a well-rounded officer in courtroom, right, as a bailiff, or a courtroom police officer, as an RSO. A lot of times, unless it's a major city, a lot of the RSOs, SROs, school resource officers, are sheriff's deputies. You could go to detention, and this is what I tell people a lot of times when they're applying to sheriffs. It's like, hey, are you okay with doing a year or two in detention first? Because that's what it might take before you're eligible to do parole. Some sheriff's departments do rotations. Every 2, 3, or 4 years, you are rotated to patrol or detention, depending on what level rank you achieve in those years. So keep that in mind if you're saying, hey, detention's out for me. And detention and corrections are different. Make sure you understand that. So, a sheriff deputy that does detentions is not the same as a corrections officer, but they have a lot of similar roles. So kind of keep that in mind. So you have detention, right? You have patrol, obviously. You have special units. You still have canines. County can have SWAT teams. So, they can have Marine divisions a lot of times, which is boat divisions. They can even have helo divisions, depending on how big the department is. But just keep that in mind. I tell a lot of people, when you're looking at county, quote-unquote, sheriff's deputies, there's more to it. But there's more opportunity to learn as well. I think anyone applying to because not a lot of people from the people I deal with usually go after it. I think if I was ever applying to a sheriff's department, I would immediately be like, hey, you want to start detention, or you want to start, courtroom? I'd be like, courtroom, absolutely, send me to courtroom. Not because I don't want to do detention, but because a lot of officers lack in the legal aspect of the criminal justice system. And, we know how to do our section of it, where we ticket or we arrest, but the follow through is unknown to a lot of departments unless they have had to testify and get a lot of courtroom experience. So what better way than to spend a year or two sitting by the judge and listening to how defense attorneys and how prosecuting attorneys work, and how that judge, wants etiquette in their courtroom. I mean, it is a level of experience that is just amazing to be able to get while being paid to as well. So that would be my consideration for it. All right, so that's county. Now let's go to state. Typically, right, there's nothing that's ever guaranteed, but typically you will find state agencies are the most well-funded. Typically, they are usually the most well-funded because they are the premier agency within the state that you're operating in, and they have the ability to have any of the specialty units, to have a crisis negotiation or a hostage team or a SWAT team, helo unit, marine unit, divers unit, doesn't matter. They're usually the ones that have those resources or have access to those resources. If you are state, like I said, chances are you're subject to relocation, right? You sign a relocation agreement when you apply, or when you're given the job offer. And at that point in time, usually they'll have good starting salaries. State police do a lot of patrol, and they are mostly, usually, not all state, but a lot of state are actually considered highway patrol, which is traffic is a huge part of what they do on highways and things like that. Now, they can respond to other calls, but highway patrol is a lot of what they do. So if there's an accident on a highway in the rain or the snow, it's usually going to be assigned to highway patrol. If there is or if you don't like writing tickets all the time, consider that, because you're most likely, just like with sheriff's deputies, you're going to start in something other than patrol. With highway patrol, you're going to mostly start on the highway, writing tickets all day, every day, or responding to accidents and things like that. Now, every department should have, an investigative unit, criminal investigation division, CID, or whatever they're going to call it. Pretty much they're detectives. With state police, their detectives are going to handle more of the high-profile crimes and things like that come within anywhere of the state. So once again, they're going to usually have jurisdictional superiority, so to say, depending if they want to come in outside of the federal aspect. Now, if I wanted to go federal, a lot of people think, I can't go federal right off the bat. That's not true at all. And, I need to be, a cop first in local or city or state or county. Not true. You can apply directly to federal. What I will tell you is 90, well, maybe not 90, arbitrary number. A majority of uniform law enforcement patrol you will find for federal in the Washington, D.C. area, or the major cities that have a maybe sub branch or something like that of federal system. FPS, Federal Protective Services, it's a federal law enforcement organization. They fall under Homeland Security. Those are the uniform patrols that you'll find more scattered across the U.S., but once again, mostly concentrated in the D.C. area. You will find them in other aspects. Another one on the conservation side that you will find in almost every state is the National Park Service law enforcement rangers. So a lot of times people think, backcountry law enforcement, which is what I started in, where I'm out hiking, camping all the time, catching poachers, resource violations, things like that, ensuring not only the safety but the legal aspect of conservation law. That's usually not the case with the National Park Service. Most of the time they're uniform and they're front country patrol, and think of the national park as their own little city. So once again, they're cross-trained in special weapons, they're cross-trained in conservation, they're cross-trained in DUI and traffic. It's that's actually predominantly what most law enforcement in the National Park Service do. So you'll find they're considered uniform as well. They have their own investigators, but they're very few and far between. Those are very coveted jobs, is investigations for National Park Service, and usually each park has one person or more, depending on the size of it, assigned. The counter to that will be special agents or agent positions. So there's some other departments out there. and I'm not going to list it, which they're uniform, not uniform. I'm not going to list it because I'm unsure. There's some sensitive information surrounding this department, but this department has officers that go through uniform training, but then are kind of more civilian clothes. Anyway, regardless, they're kind of national, and you can get on with them. If you know about them, you know about them. If not, I'm unsure about what I can disclose, just due to the clearance levels for what they have access to. That being said, they're kind of a quasi uniform department that you'll find all across the nation, and they're considered agents, not special agents. They're just considered agents, law enforcement agents. And then other departments will also have individuals considered agents. And then when you think special agents, you'll get into the situation where you think Homeland Security special agents. Obviously you have your FBI special agents, you have your U.S. Air Marshals or your Marshals. A lot of times those are considered special agents. You'll see that a lot of times. And once again, you'll find these availabilities in every state. You will find them, when you list, and the best way to find these jobs is on usajobs.gov. For special agents, type in code 1811 or just type in special agents or law enforcement. You'll see everything that pops up. But specifically for special agents, type in code 1811 in the search bar. You will be able to then determine. Now, once again, usually better paid, or I shouldn't say better. We got good pay in law enforcement these days, but even higher paid salary positions. Once again, a lot of those are subject to relocation agreements, so keep that in mind. But there's a lot, DEA, once again, U.S. Marshals, U.S. Air Marshals, two separate things. Homeland Security, or HSI, right, is another one. FBI kind of does their own thing. There's a multitude. ATF, right? There's a multitude of three-letter organizations out there that do it. Another one to consider is if you have a base. And once again, I'm going back to uniform patrol. If you have a military base in your organization, in your state nearby that you can apply to, a really good one that is usually hiring a lot is military installations for civilian law enforcement officers, not military police where you got to go in and enlist. No, these are civilian law enforcement. You patrol the base. Once again, a base is like a national park. It's its own little city inside there, right? So you patrol the base, you issue citations, there's specialty units in there as well. Sometimes you might be doing some, usually that's assigned to military police, but we'd call it gate dudes, but it would be access control, people accessing. Usually military police are the ones on call responding if there's an issue at access control points from military police officers, which would be the actual Army, if it's the Army, Master of Arms, if it's the Navy, whatever that branch is, military police is considered or called. So that's another one that you consider if you're looking for places to apply. But there's a multitude, and look into it. For federal law enforcement, USA Jobs for uniform 0083 will be your police officer positions. Just type that in and type in your state. That'll come up. For special agents, 1811. For a kind of universal code, but you need to make sure that it's a law enforcement one, you can type in 1801, and usually that will be your investigator / just agent positions. But once again, could still be a special agent. Those are usually your odd organizations that might have a law enforcement. I mean, IRS has law enforcement officers, SEC has law enforcement officers. There's a multitude. So don't just think you're just stuck local, state, or federal in your state. Just be advised, you can just apply to a federal organization just in your state and just mark, hey, I'm only willing to be accepted here in this state. Keep that in mind. Hope this helps. There's so much more to this, but I hope this little bit helps. Once again, if you have any questions, you can jump on a free coaching call with any member of my team or even myself. And also down in the description is the Getting Started workshop. Walk you through every phase of the hiring process, cover even more than what other departments may or may not have. Stay safe, and I will see you next time.